Welcome back to A Perfect Touch. Hi, I'm Jeanette. It's been a dream of mine to create aprons for many decades. For no reason, I don't wear aprons, but I remember my grandmother, who was born in 1897, always wearing an apron. Nothing fancy, but she cooked on a wood stove and had 13 children, and I imagine an apron came in very handy. This is one of the few photos that I have from my childhood. It is my grandmother, my mother, my great-grandfather, and the baby is me. I participated in a Sew for Victory challenge, and I found this 1940s pattern on Etsy, and I recreated it. It was my first applique project. I had a lot of fun and learned a lot of new things with this. It was really enjoyable. Later, I discovered a 1930s pattern on Etsy, and it was to recycle an old tablecloth into a tablecloth apron. And I did just that. I found a tablecloth at a flea market, recycled it, and where it had a few holes, I covered those with daisies. I deviated from my timeline just a bit. I jumped ahead to the 1970s when I found this pattern on Etsy. It was just too fun to resist. And I made these chaprons. That's what we'll call them, a chapron. I made that for my husband and I this past summer. I'll put links in the description boxes below for my blog posts for the 1930s and 40s aprons, and I'll put one there for the 1970s chapron, just in case you're up for a little bit of fun. So now I'm back to my original apron timeline. And when I found this 1924 Apron and Cap from Repeated Originals on Etsy, I immediately purchased the downloadable pattern. Then I printed it, cut it for assembly, found a twin-size sheet that had been on the guest room beds in a previous home, and immediately moved on to another project. And that happens sometimes, doesn't it? And here I am many years later with a project that is perfect for this apron and cap. I locate all my stashed items, and it's time to sew this little beauty. The February 2020 Historical Sew Monthly Challenge, we can do any of the 12 challenges in any order, is called Reuse. Use thrifted materials or old garments or bed linen to make a new garment. Mend, reshape, or retrim an existing garment to prolong its life. My 1924 apron and cap will be perfect for this challenge and my project. The downloadable pattern is easy to assemble. Every piece is shown on a scale diagram, and the pieces line up easily and perfectly. In a few minutes, the pieces are assembled and cut. The sheet is cut for front, back, pockets, and the crown and band for the cap. Quite a few years ago, I purchased some items from an historical costumer in a Facebook D-Stash group. If you have read any of my other blog posts or seen videos, you know that I'm a huge fan of these groups for buying, selling, and trading unused items. When I received my package with my purchase, the costumer had included 2 beautiful embellishments. They were mirror images, and I had set them aside for the cap for this project. I was going to remove the pearls, but just didn't have the heart. I'm so glad I didn't, and I'll tell you about that later. I had bias tape for the edges, and while not very elegant or colorful, it was in my stash and would work well. Other notions included thread and snaps for the cap. I had 2 unique and matching mother-of-pearl buttons in my stash, and with the pearls on the embellishment, I thought that would blend well and pretty up this otherwise plain apron and cap. I started with the cap. I always start with the headwear, and I am not quite sure why. Maybe if it doesn't work, I won't waste my time on anything else. I don't know. But starting with the cap, I marked all the snap placements, 16 around the crown to attach the band, and 2 for the back of the band. I was very tempted to simply gather the crown and sew the parts together, but I thought about the purpose of this cap and realized how easy it would be to simply unsnap and wash and starch and iron both pieces. So I stayed true to the 1924 instructions and continued with the snaps. I hemmed the crown with a narrow, hand-sewn hem, machine stitched the sides and lower edges of the band, turned the band right side out, and pressed everything. Then I basted the top edge of the band. Now I'm ready for the snaps. The cotton fabric is light, and I decided that sewing snaps through just one layer of the band would not be sturdy enough. But sewing through both layers meant the thread would be visible on the outside of the band. Inspiration hit, and I remembered having a few leftover freshwater pearls from a previous project. These would be beautiful to cover the thread on the outside of the band and add the perfect touch with the pearls on the band embellishment and the pearl buttons. I did a trial with my idea, and I loved it. Time to settle in with some tea and start sewing snaps. As I was sewing snaps, I started to realize that the crown diameter seemed small compared to the band height. I tested the fit on my head form, and then I cut 1.5 inches off the top of the band. I like these proportions much better. With the band height adjusted, I again basted the top edge of the band and then sewed the bias binding along the top edge. The fabric was just sandwiched between the bias tape with the shorter edge to the outside. Then I sewed by machine with a zipper foot for a clean edge on the outside of the band, knowing that since that was the shorter side, I would definitely catch the longer inside edge of the tape. I finished sewing my snaps and pearls to the band. The cap is complete. Here is the outside of the crown and the back of the band where the snaps will meet, and the inside of the crown and the front of the band. When snapped together, even gathers are created in the crown. Here is the underside of the finished cap. Here is the finished cap, front, back, and side. A pretty cap for working in the kitchen, don't you agree? Now for the apron. This pattern is a sewing tutorial all by itself. The finishing page explains how to sew a French seam, how to sew snaps, how to finish the edges with bias fabric or bias tape in several methods, and even directions for hand-sewn buttonholes. A very inexperienced seamstress could be successful with this pattern. The first step is to apply French seams to attach the front and back at the shoulders. Then, using the same method for binding the upper edge of the cap band, I added bias tape to all edges of the apron and the pockets. The pockets are sewn to the apron where they seem natural for me. And lastly, I sewed 2 buttonholes on the back sides of the apron and added the pearl buttons to the front. Finished! The 1924 apron and cap are ready to wear. Time to wear this fun apron and cap in the kitchen. It'll be perfect if I have another Downton Abbey event, but it's also going to be perfect for a video that I created, which is part 2 of my historical Halloween. There are links if you're in the mood for short and fun videos. And I'll also put a link here for creating the rainbow costume that was part of that video. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this little project. Until next time.